Hello, my people. Hola, mi gente. Welcome back to Juntos with Eduardo.
And Eva.
Today, we have a interesting subject that we wanted to talk about um, to you guys. As you already know, we're people from different cultures, people with different backgrounds as well. It's not just the culture. We grew up very differently. So we wanted to touch on how we are both from different worlds, but we have created one together. So maybe that's something that you want to experience in your life or something that you would like to explore. Maybe your partner is from a different world than yours. And again, it does not have to be cultural, but for us it is. We're from two different cultures. Eva is Bulgarian, I'm Mexican, straight out of Mexico, rain and born and raised. I mean, I have lived half of my life in Mexico, half of my life in the U.S. And Eva came here when she was little, and but I also have a background in farming and lived in a small village versus her growing up in the burbs of Illinois. So, anything you want to add to that, babe, before we get started?
Yeah, and I think too, our family structures too played a role because I grew up as an only child for 13 years, and Eduardo has four other brothers.
Mm.
So that dynamic also, I think, plays a different role. But I'm excited for us to share with you today how we took where we came from and how we have taken that as a strength and embraced it and
Mm.
learned from each other and have molded that into like the way that we live our
Mm.
life today. And I think we've both learned from each other's ways.
Mm.
So our first question is, what have we learned from each other's world that helped us grow into who we are today? So, what did you learn from me sharing like the way that I was raised
Mm.
and
Well,
and the way I was.
I think that more than cultural, I think you being an only child, um, I think played into the role of what we talked about in a previous podcast or episode, where it played on you never, at least from my perspective, maybe it's different, but from my perspective, you always get what you want. Uh, if you see something in the store that you really want and you have the money to buy it, you go get it. If you go to a farmer's market and you have $50 on you, you spend all the $50 and you get every single thing that you could afford with those $50 that you wanted. Versus me growing in a huge um, household with just one salary, and my dad lived in the U.S. and we lived and at the farm. It was always about what do I need because there was 5 mouths to feed, children to feed.
Mhm.
And so the thing that I learned from you, and I said in the other episode, is that it doesn't have to always be about what you need. It's also about what you want. So if you can afford that watch or those shoes or anything that you really like and you're able to afford it without being a financial burden, then you should. In the past, I would walk away from it even if I could afford it, just because of the idea that it wasn't needed. It wasn't something that I needed. And another thing that I learned from your family dynamic was to celebrate. We didn't celebrate at all. And and that comes from the family dynamic that I have with my parents, not doing what wasn't necessary. It was always what was necessary. A celebration wasn't necessary. Birthdays were not necessary. Parties were not necessary. So one thing that I noticed your family doing a lot was doing holidays get together, holiday celebrations, birthday celebrations, anniversary celebrations, a bunch of other celebrations, right? You guys got together a lot, and your mom would cook for you for the whole family, and we would share it, and we would sit around the table. This is when we were still cool with your family, obviously. Versus my family, they're so loving. My family is so loving, but we never celebrated shit. So when you came into my life and you tried to celebrate birthdays and all these things at the beginning, I had resistance toward that. I had a lot of resistance. It didn't feel, it felt unnatural. My cousins and uncles and aunts, they did celebrate stuff. To be honest, we were never invited. Well, I wouldn't say never, but a lot of the times we're not invited. And the uncles and aunts that would invite us would live in the US, you know? So like my aunt Lupe, she always has big gatherings and she always invite us. My uncle Jose, rest in peace, he was someone that had like almost like a big brother relationship with me, and he would invite me to stuff too. But they were in the U.S. and I was in Mexico, and of the people that were in Mexico, they had a tendency to not invite us. So it was not part of my daily living to celebrate.
Mm.
And when you would celebrate wins or stuff like that, that was such a foreign thing to me. Remember when we first started hugging when we were friends and you would go for a hug? Sometimes I would pull back, and then it just felt good to receive a hug. But that wasn't something we did in my family. Maybe like I said, my uncles, aunts, and all of them they did, but not in my nucleus, not in my immediate family. We never hugged each
Mm.
other. We never told each other that we love each other. And I saw you saying I love you to your dad, or saying to me, once we started dating, I love you. That was such a foreign thing to me. And I remember when I first moved to the US and we lived with my aunt Lupe and my cousins for some time. And I would see them saying to each other, I love you. I love you, brother, too, to each other
Mhm.
as brothers. And it was such a foreign concept to me.
Mhm.
We would show each other that we loved each other, but we never said it.
Mhm.
We never received an I'm proud of you. We never received recognition for anything we did. In fact, it was the opposite for my family. Anytime we did something wrong, we would get scolded. Um, and anytime we did something good to our standards, they would find a reason why it wasn't good, right?
Mhm.
Like, for example, with my dad, I remember this very clearly. We went to the country because we had a farm, right? And my dad would come to Mexico every now and then. I only saw my dad like 3 times growing up because he wouldn't come to Mexico that often. But one of the times he came, I remember we rode in his red F-150 that he had, his truck. Took us to the country to get alfalfa for our sheep and pigs and horses. He had purchased it from a friend. So we went to this piece of land that had alfalfa, and we had a hose, I think they call it. What is it? The thing that you use to cut the grass. I don't know the definition in English, but it's almost like a hook,
Mhm.
and but it's sharpened in the middle and on the inside internally, and you use those to cut the alfalfa. And there's a bigger one. I think those are sickles. So my dad had a sickle, and I had the other tool that I talked about. I really don't know. It's basically like a machete, but in the shape of a hook, and it's sharpened in the inside. And I remember that there was a certain level that you had to cut the alfalfa uh, from the ground to to the peak, because if you cut it too close to the peak, then you would be wasting the alfalfa because you would be
Mhm.
leaving it on the ground. But if you cut it too close to the ground, you would be damaging your tools because you would hit the ground. And so you had to get the perfect motion. And I was like 7 years old. You don't have that coordination to do that. And I remember that I wasn't getting it right, and my dad literally hit me with the tools very hard. And once I got it after a couple times, he didn't say good job. It was like an expectation. When I did it wrong, I got my ass whooped. But when I did it right, it wasn't like, yes, like that, or yes, you got it now. It was almost like you should have been doing it like this whole time. So those are some of the things. I know I went into whole stories, but those are some of the things that I learned from you. How about from your perspective?
Oh. Well, I was gonna say we should share the story of when we celebrated your first birthday and I took you out for Mexican food in the little town of DeKalb, Illinois,
Mhm.
because that's where we went to school. And um,
You can share it.
I forgot
I've been
the
talking a lot today.
I forgot the restaurant, what it was called. Uh, but they had sombreros, and I told them it was your birthday, and we got you a sombrero. And then I went, I said, oh, I have to go to the restroom. And then I went and I said, hey, it's his birthday, can you guys come surprise him with a song, because I knew that they did that at that restaurant. And then they came out and they sang to you, and I thought, you were gonna be like so like excited and that it was like a nice surprise, and I think you did feel that way, but you also felt very uncomfortable.
Yes, because that wasn't normal.
Yeah, it was the first time someone had also ever celebrated your birthday, right? And you were like 23.
There's just been multiple times where people gave me like a happy birthday or stuff like that, but actually celebrated and sat down with me and celebrated, yeah. Because I remember there was a celebration of my birthday in combination with Chumas, my little brother. That was another time where my celebration, which I was celebrated for my birthday, but because he was the youngest, all the attention was on him. So
Mm.
even though I did have that celebration, the attention was on him. But yeah, I mean, uncles and aunts have told me happy birthday, have even given me sometimes money or stuff like that. But
Mhm.
like an actual birthday party here to celebrate you and a bunch of gifts or stuff like that, no, that was the first time that someone did that. Because my aunt Pilar did it at Red Robin once, but it wasn't even my birthday. So she did it to embarrass me and to get me cake because I think it was free cake.
Yeah.
And then what was funny is that I didn't speak English very well back then.
Mhm.
I understood very little, and she
Mhm.
did it on purpose because she was being funny. And
Mhm.
I still remember that. Yeah.
Oh. Well, I guess to answer the question, what have I learned from your world that has helped me grow into who I am today? I would say the biggest thing I've learned from you is how to work with what you have. Like, be resourceful and just make it work with what you have. That's something that I've most definitely learned from you. And I think being an entrepreneur, it has put it into practice, but it was something that like you embody that. And also, I was telling you earlier today on our walk, because it just came to me, how you are someone who is so sure of yourself. Like, you have such a strong connection to yourself. And I think that when people come to you for guidance or advice or like to figure out what to do next, it's that energy that you emit of like you have had that connection for so long. And we were talking about how to you, like it's just like natural, like you'll just like share, in the moment. But to me, like I can actually feel the difference between when something's coming from my mind versus like a higher space, because I had to learn how to connect to the higher space because I had my whole life connecting to my mind, like everyone teaches you that. but to be able to actually come from that inner space and that inner compass, I think part of my journey with my intuition also was learning from you too. I think you help me also like ground a lot. Like I was very in the clouds and like ethereal at the beginning of my journey, and you help me see that when you ground it, like that's actually how you connect. And to go with that, I think to something, I don't know if this is necessarily something I would say I have like learned, but something I've gained and is a whole community, like a whole family. I think growing up as a only child, there would be so many times where I was in my bedroom like all alone and I just wanted a friend. I begged my parents for a dog and my parents always said no. And looking back now, I understand like, oh, I just wanted that companion. Like, I just wanted someone to snuggle me and be there with me because everything just felt, you're growing up, like, you're navigating all these developmental stages and you just want to not be alone, like, not have to do it alone. Like, I know I had my parents, but it's different. Like, there's things that you're moving through that sometimes you're not comfortable sharing with your own parents, and I wanted a sibling like my whole life. Like I would like think about, oh, how great would it be to have a sibling. And when I was younger, I would like tell myself like, oh, like I wish I had like an older brother, like I wish I had that like protector, like that person who could be there for me and guide me, because sometimes I just felt so alone and I felt like I wasn't understanding like life and friends, and I just wanted that guidance. And then I always thought about if I had a younger sibling, I would want a sister because I would want to be the older sister. And um later my sister was born when I was in 8th grade, so we have a 13-year age gap, and she very much is, like, I feel like she was kind of more of a daughter to me than a sister because of our age gap. But I love her a lot and I wish her like only the best. um but I think from you, like, what I love so much is that family that I've been so welcomed into. Like, everyone has been so kind to me, and from the start, like talking to me and making me really feel like part of the family. Even sometimes like some of them like speaking in English to me when they can tell like I can't understand what they're saying in Spanish. um and yeah, it's just, I mean, with every family there's always dynamics and nuances, but I think too what I see from your family is when people need to show up, they do, and that's really beautiful to see. Like the support, a lot of health and family deaths and stuff have happened in the past few years, and it's been really beautiful to see that, because I grew up and it was just me and my parents here. It was just us. All the rest of our family is in Bulgaria. So I never grew up with that sense of community, and I always longed for it.
And if you're listening and you're in a similar boat as Eva growing up, where you didn't have friends um, at the doing of your own parents, but if you're someone like her, where you didn't have a lot of family or you didn't have friends around you, I would encourage you to build that yourself, around yourself. I'm not trying to say your situation isn't valid, but it's up to you to do that now. I think that At least here in the US, people tend to be individualistic. But as Eva was saying, when there are illnesses or births or deaths in the family, no matter where we're at with my cousins and uncles or with my brothers, we all show up in our own way. And I think that's a very powerful thing to do. And have also have cultivated good friendships from high school and before here in the US. And a lot of my friends have showed up when I needed them, and I have showed up for them. So this is your sign to have a community, create a community if you don't have that,
Mhm.
because it's very important once you need a community. That's something that is not taught here, but in my culture, we're very community based,
Mhm.
and it shows when you need it. Like when my dad got super sick and we needed to uh, make some money or gather some money for some of his bills. My mom's friends came through and did a whole kermes, which is basically a bunch of us just getting together, cooking and selling for the benefit of my dad, and all the profits go to him or went to him. And a lot of people showed up, and all of the labor was for free. All of the products were for free. My family showed up and the friends, and that's when you really see the power of community,
Mhm.
because community is very important. And so I think that even though this is not the podcast or the episode we want to talk about community, I just wanted to sprinkle it there because it's super, super important to have that support.
So, what would we say to someone who's afraid to love someone from a different world?
Well, the first thing I would say to you is, why are you afraid? What's uh what's the thing that makes you afraid from loving someone from a different world? What are the beliefs and tendencies that you have within you or within your family that you grew up with that makes you afraid? What are you afraid of? And if the answer is, I'm afraid of how my parents are going to react, well, then you can navigate that, right? Because at the end of the day, and this is how I think, in my opinion, at the end of the day, your parents, although they love you and they gave you life, they're not going to spend the rest of their lives with you unless you live in the same household, and maybe. But the normal, right? The normal um, situation and a normal human, not that it isn't normal, but the average human, you'll live with your parents till you're 18, you go to college, you come back maybe for a year or two, maybe three, and then you go on your own, you marry someone, for most people, like I said, and you create a family with them. So most of your life is going to be lived with a partner, and you may create little humans with them. So if you're afraid of how your parents are going to react, approach it with love. Let them know why you love this individual,
Mm.
why you feel so sure about them. Because at the end of the day, we're all humans. We're all the same. Our cultures may be different, but they're all the same. Our backgrounds may be different. I have five brothers. You have one, and she came very late. Four brothers actually, so five together. I grew up in the middle of nowhere in Mexico, in a very small village, uh, just surrounded by animals. We didn't even watch TV. We would watch TV on the weekends, and that wasn't because we didn't have a TV, because we did. It was because we didn't have time.
Mm.
So we would watch TV on the weekends, and it was just in the morning, because then we would go hang out and go out and play soccer in the evening. And and you can tell that at our household, the the apartment, it's cleaner because of Eva. That doesn't mean I suck at cleaning, but one of the things at the farm is it's never clean. So you get used to having shit around on the floor and on the counters everywhere, because you're working with animals. Do you think animals are clean at all? Do you think a cow is walking around and then another cow walking by it, and it's like, oh, Elizabeth, I gotta take a shit, so I gotta run to the corner. Oh yeah, please hurry up. Karen, you gotta make sure no one's looking. Like they don't think about it. They're literally just walking around, pooping, shedding, peeing everywhere. Same thing with horses. They
Mm.
as they walk, they poop and they pee. They don't even fucking stop. So that's honestly something that comes from my background. But
Mhm.
something that always also comes from my background is figuring shit out, because that's how it is in the farm. If you don't have a rope, you figure it out. You take off your shirt and you make it into a rope if it's an emergency. You know, you figure it out. You make things. If you need a shovel, and in order to get that shovel, you have to walk 50 minutes back to your land, then you fucking go get a stick that's a little wider and looks like a shovel, and you use it as a shovel. You
Mhm.
figure it out.
Do you have anything else to say that's regarding our question though?
I go on this side roads.
What you accuse me of doing that, but ever
I do
since
that
we've
too.
had these questions, I've been pretty good at staying on track.
Yeah,
Um, can I share my answer?
yeah.
What would I say to someone who's afraid to love someone from a different world? I would say that based on my lived experience, loving someone from a different world only enriches your life because really, like Eduardo said, we're all humans at the end of the day, and our lived experience, our cultures should not be a barrier to love. They really shouldn't be. And if you've got family members that disapprove or have an issue with it, that's you have to let that be their experience, and you have to start taking ownership for your own life and for your own experience. That's what I had to do. And it was rough because my parents ultimately kind of made an ultimatum of like, if you pick Eduardo, then like I got disowned. But I think that in that journey for me was really asking Eva, what does she want for herself? What kind of lifestyle, what kind of partner goes with that lifestyle? And I think people around us will always have an opinion,
Mhm.
but when you let your voice be drowned out by that and you can't even hear your own voice anymore, that's when you need to stop and really reconnect and get clear on what is it you actually want, because you're the one living with yourself and that person, for the rest of your life, if that's how things go, because I know the divorce rate is also really high right now.
Yeah, it's like 55%, so it's more than half
But I think
them.
it's because people are that's another episode. We'll do another episode on that.
Yeah. But I think to go along with what you were saying, it's like ultimately listening to yourself. What do you want for yourself, and how do you want your life to be? At the end of the day, parents, brothers, teachers, coaches, presidents can give you wrong advice for your life.
Mhm.
Even doctors can give you wrong advice, right? That's why they always tell you to seek a second opinion if it's something big, right? So go with what's best for you. Trust your gut. And unfortunately, sometimes that may mean stepping away from your family. And also, just to get to the end of this podcast, something to keep in mind that we'll do another podcast 2 episode on this is your family can be toxic, even though if they are your family and you love them. I'm not accusing anyone's family to do that, but I have plenty of interactions with friends whose families are extremely toxic, and I always tell them, if they were in your family, would you have a relationship with them? Because at the end of the day, you have to build a relationship with your family too. It's not just a given just because you're family. Anything you want to add before we finish, Big?
You're free to love whoever you want. And if you guys come from different worlds, then you get to do what we did and you get to take your experiences and who you are and create your own together. So
and
we,
and get to create humans, if you decide to have. They're gonna have two different cultures. Our little kids are gonna love
mm,
banitza and tacos.
Yes. Yeah, if anything, they get to learn more about different ways of living. That's kind of all culture is at the end of the day, right? Just a different way of living, different flavor of it. Thank you so much for tuning into our episode, and we will see you guys in the next one. Feel free to comment, like, share, subscribe. That really helps get our message out. And if you have any specific questions you would love to ask us and want to be featured on a future episode, we have a link to anonymously ask us questions down below in the captions. So check that out. Thank you again for listening, and until next time.